completely caused by California government. And that's the only reason why California is no longer the greatest state in the country. We have the greatest businesses, greatest people, greatest business mind, the greatest innovators, the greatest creators, the greatest entrepreneurs in the country. My wife and I were fortunate enough to go to Europe last year. We paid for a sommelier to come in and make sure that we learned everything about Italian wine and all of that stuff. The first introductions, where are you from? California, and he laughed. And he said, you guys have that.
I said to my friend the other day, I said, you know, on this age, and we can get into debates around fitness, look, I'd rather have 80 years behind me than those 88 federal criminal counts in front of me. And so I feel very good about Joe Biden.
My message is, Gavin Newsom, I am going to expose you for the complete fraud that you are, the liar that you are, and you will never, ever be the president of this country.
California, a state already boiling with political battles, just got hit with a moment that no one saw coming because a sheriff standing up against the system, standing up against Sacramento, did the unthinkable, and the fallout has Gavin Newsom in absolute rage. This wasn't a quiet disagreement. This wasn't behind-the-scenes lobbying. This was bold, public, and defiant. A sheriff drawing a line in the sand and saying enough, no more. We're not going along with this anymore. And when that message hit, it sent shockwaves across the state. For years, Newsom has operated like California is his fortress, dictating policy from the top, pushing sweeping laws on crime, on guns, on immigration, on COVID, but this sheriff just shattered that image, standing tall and calling out the governor directly, in front of cameras, in front of citizens, daring him to respond. And Newsom did respond. Not with calm, not with cool leadership, but with rage, because when someone inside the state's own system pushes back, when law enforcement refuses to fall in line, it's not just disagreement, it's rebellion, and rebellion is contagious. The sheriff's move wasn't just about policy, it was about principle, about standing with the people he swore to protect instead of bending to political pressure.
And we're just looking at each other like, how would someone across the world know that we have a lunatic for a governor? I was concerned with my career, my life, my family, my own home, and making sure that I was... The chief of police from the largest police agency in the country said that they are being overwhelmed. Governor Newsom needs to put his phone down, go sit in his house behind the comfort of his TV screen and a couch, and be quiet, because he is doing nothing but fueling this.
And in California, where crime is spiking, where citizens feel abandoned, where small towns and big cities alike are questioning leadership, that message resonated instantly. You could hear in the crowd, you could see in the reaction online. People are tired, people are angry, and when a sheriff steps up and says what they've been thinking, it hits like a thunderclap. It changes the conversation overnight. And here's the truth. This isn't just one sheriff making a stand. This is a symbol of something much bigger, a shift in momentum. A moment that puts cracks in the image of California's invincible leadership. And that's why Newsom's rage was so raw. Because rage is what happens when control slips, when power is challenged, when fear creeps in that maybe, just maybe, the walls are beginning to crumble. And now the question is clear. Will this sheriff's stand ignite something larger, or will Newsom's fury try to crush it before it spreads?
He needs to stay out of the way of law enforcement. He knows nothing about this. He has enabled this lawless act that is going on right now. This has been years in the making that he has encouraged. So quite frankly, I don't care what he says. He says everything in a disingenuous manner for his own personal political gain, and we are suffering the consequences.
So what exactly did this sheriff do? What was so unthinkable, so bold, that it made Gavin Newsom snap in rage? Here's the truth. He openly defied Sacramento, not in whispers, not in private, but out in the open, in front of cameras, refusing to enforce one of the governor's most controversial new policies. And that policy? It's part of Newsom's latest wave of legislation. Laws that critics say go too far, laws that strip away local control, laws that force sheriffs and police departments to follow a political agenda instead of protecting communities. And for this sheriff, the breaking point came when Newsom pushed even harder on issues like gun restrictions and sanctuary policies. The sheriff said enough. He declared that his duty was to the Constitution and to the people, not to Sacramento, and in a state where most law enforcement is expected to quietly comply. That declaration was explosive. It was the kind of open defiance that instantly made him a hero to some and a villain to others. Now here's why Newsom raged, because his entire leadership style depends on control, on compliance, on the image that California is united behind his vision. But the moment one sheriff stood up and refused, that image cracked, and the governor knows cracks spread fast. If one sheriff refuses, what happens if two refuse? What happens if 10 counties decide they've had enough? Suddenly, it's not just political disagreement. It's a full-blown rebellion, and rebellions, once they catch fire, are almost impossible to contain. And make no mistake, the sheriff's decision resonated because Californians have been living with rising crime, with policies that feel disconnected from reality, with leadership that seems more interested in ideology than in safety. And this act of defiance gave voice to that frustration. It told citizens that yes, someone is listening, yes, someone is willing to push back. Now Newsom's rage makes sense because anger is often rooted in fear, fear of losing power, fear of losing control, fear of being exposed. And in this case, his fury revealed just how dangerous this moment is for him politically. Because if the narrative spreads, if the sheriff's message continues to echo, Newsom risks being seen not as a strong leader, but as an authoritarian figure being openly resisted by the very people tasked with enforcing his policies. And in politics, perception is everything. And here's the kicker. This story isn't going away. The video is already everywhere. The sheriff's words are being shared, repeated, amplified, and the more people see it, the harder it becomes for Newsom to put the genie back in the bottle. So yes, the sheriff did the unthinkable. Yes, he defied the governor. And yes, the governor raged, but the fallout is far from over because this wasn't just a moment, it was a spark. And sparks, when they land in dry fields, ignite fires that no one can control. And Gavin Newsom, for the first time in a long time, he's not the one holding the match. He's the one watching the flames spread around him.